Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the Uncanny X-Men number 164, cover dated December 1982. And this is a really eye-catching cover by Dave Cockrum. It's his last issue on the title, and he's going out with a bang in terms of the cover and also the interior artwork. The inks are by Bob Wiacek over Cockrum on this, and of course the eye is directed by these devices here, the flaring around Binary's head. We've no cover caption to tell us who this character is, but it's Carol Danvers in her new identity as Binary, and it's such a well-designed costume too. Dave Cockrum, one of the things he was renowned for was costume design, and this is one that evokes in many ways Phoenix and of course Dark Phoenix. But details of the costume that I like are these kinds of flames coming off her boots and her arm bands there as well. Really nicely done. And we've got the two little stars there for her name, Binary. And we've got the X-Men marveling around her as well. So really nice cover, very eye-catching indeed. Let's open it up to the splash page, and we do get a splash page to begin the issue. The title of the story, Binary Star. The creative team here, Chris Claremont writer, Dave Cockrum penciler, Bob Wiacek finisher. That means that Cockrum is providing breakdowns, pencil breakdowns, and Wiacek finishing the art in the ink. Joe Rosen letterer, and Janine Casey colorist. So Orzechowski and Glynis Oliver not involved in this particular issue. So we've got little headshots there around Lilandra's pleasure yacht, the Shri R, if I'm remembering the name of it. And at the end of the previous issue, it was under attack, which is what is exclaimed there by Lilandra. So let's continue and get right into the story. So there's more design work going on by Cockrum here in this last issue of his on the title. We have these shark ships here. They're brood fighter craft, short-range, high-velocity vessels, highly maneuverable and heavily armed. And it'll turn out that they're also sentient as well, enslaved by the brood. So Cockrum, right to the end, adding more visual designs and things that are part of the kind of brood story world to the title before exiting. And so we open with action. Nice little color hold here of this hunt master calling in to the mother, the brood mother here, who gives him instructions that the X-Men are to be taken alive, with one exception, she says. The X-Man Wolverine may be slain. He and his companions are host forms for my progeny, but somehow he managed to destroy the egg implanted within him. That was 2 issues ago. No more of my children are to die. Is that clear? Any sacrifice to that end is acceptable. Should you fail, Huntmaster, be certain you yourself are among the slain. So she is going to accept no excuses in terms of not bringing the X-Men back. I like the detail here of the brood firefighting in the Queen's Nest here. That's a nice little detail. And of course all those fires set by the X-Men in the previous issue in the fight against the brood and their queen. So back to the space chase, and here we've got Lilandra's yacht. Can't move into warp drive yet because they're still caught in the gravity well of the star that is in their vicinity. And so they're going to have to figure out a way to take on the fighter craft that are sending warning shots across their bows, not actually attacking directly the ship yet. And Colossus is putting it together. They keep missing Carol. They must be very poor shots. And she says, far from it, Colossus. They're shooting wide deliberately to get us to surrender. I wonder why. And Cyclops thinks to himself, so do I. The brood's been handling us with kid gloves ever since they kidnapped us. So the X-Men do not know that they have brood queen eggs implanted in them. The only person that knows that is Wolverine here. So Lilandra says that she can't divert any more power to the shields. She needs it for the engines. We've weapons, Cyclops, minimal though they are. Use them and your own mutant powers to keep the brood at bay. So this trio here of Colossus, Carol Danvers and Wolverine go to the weapons control center. Let's continue, and we see them here sitting into the center and the controls there. And Carol explains the status board indicates we have access to a mixed armament of blasters and fire and forget computer guided missiles. These consoles look fairly easy to operate. Simply pretend it's a video arcade game. So very much an analogy or a simile of the time period, 1982. And Colossus here having a little moral quandary about the fact that they're going to have to kill the brood. And of course, Wolverine is the one who says that it's us or them, Petey. And if ever a race deserved their fate, the brood's it. And here we get a reminder that he knows exactly about the eggs implanted in the X-Men. Maybe I can't save you and the others, he thinks, though I'd give my soul for the chance, but I can at least avenge you. So Carol there blasting away at these fighter craft and killing them, but Colossus, as I said, he is wondering about the whole business. Try as I might, neither can I put aside my doubts. I know the brood are evil, yet I keep wishing there was some other way. So he upbraids himself. Peter Nikolovich, what's the matter with you? The X-Men are your friends, your comrades. They're depending on you and you're failing them. So he's trying to rev himself up there to get into the fight. Now this is a really cool bit here. How are the likes of Cyclops going to use his mutant powers in defending against those attack ships? Well, this is really cool here. He thinks to himself, the yacht's extruded a temporary blister of ruby quartz, just like my visor, so that I can fire my optic blasts without damaging the ship. That's really cool. So we see him doing it here and taking out one of those fighter craft, but without killing it, because he recognizes that it's a living creature, like the brood starships, and he doesn't want to kill it for that reason. But he's also thinking about Wolverine, how he knows something he isn't telling us about the brood, because Wolverine was about to reveal all at the end of the previous issue before interrupted by the attack on the yacht. So Cyclops gets busy with the use of his optic blasts against those ships. Meanwhile, Storm is going to use her mutant powers. She, in her thoughts, reveals that her weather powers have limited effectiveness in space because they're too far from the sun, and it would require too much concentration for me to manipulate the solar wind. I'm forced to call upon my lightning. So she does. And she continues thinking in her thoughts, I've sworn never to take a life, yet where the brood are concerned, I'm sorely tempted to break that vow. However, while they're consummate evil, their vessels are not. I cannot do them harm. I will use the lightning to stun. But then she exclaims in her thoughts, blessed goddess, no, the bolts are out of control. The ships, I've killed them. So we'll see how she deals with that later in the issue. This is a really great shot. Great reverse angle and perspective on the brood attack ship here, firing on Lilandra's yacht. The shields are buckling and then she's been hit. And I love the way that you've got these the explosions in her control panel as well. Great sense of action in the storytelling on all of these pages. So Kitty Pryde asks, is it serious? The control elements of the warp drive are inoperative, says Lilandra. We can't effect repairs from inside the ship. Someone has to go on EVA. And then we get a nice little explanation of what that means. Extra vehicular activity. Nightcrawler volunteers, but he was injured in the previous issue by spending time in the upper atmosphere. He was almost frozen solid out there, so he's still recovering from that. So Kitty Pryde volunteers to do it. That's a great panel of her phasing through the door there onto the gangway here. Cyclops tells her it's too dangerous, but she protests. That's crazy, Scott. I'm the only one for whom it isn't dangerous. If any beams come my way, I'll phase through them as easily as I phase into this pressure suit. And using the suit's video camera and radio, Lilandra can monitor my progress and tell me what to do. I'll be careful, she says, I promise, and I'll be all right. But we'll see if she can keep that promise as we go deeper into the story. So here she is phasing out of the top of the yacht. That's a great panel as well. Just the tilted angle as she's coming out and all the attack ships firing on the yacht too. and she thinks to herself, wow, we get another period specific reference. Star Wars was never like this. So here she is running with her toolkit. I want to run, but I can't. I'm not using a safety line. One misstep, throw me off into space, and the others won't be able to stop and come back for me. So Claremont always conveying to us the danger that the heroes are facing and the bravery that they practice in overcoming those dangers, or at least, dealing with the danger. So we really have a sense of their heroism all the time, and it's nice to see that worked in to the story. So Carol here is struggling, and she's unsure why. What? My vision suddenly went blurry. I saw colours, images I never dreamed possible. But everything's normal now, probably stress, a delayed reaction to the treatment I received from the Brood. She was subjected to genetic manipulation in the previous issue. At the beginning of it, Wolverine rescued her from that, but something was set in motion, and we'll see what that is in the course of the issue. We already know what it is from the cover, but in any case, readers at the time wouldn't have known who that character was because of there being no cover caption. Another great shot of the Brood pilot on one of these fighter ships. I like the rendering of his scaly exoskeleton there as well, and fires right through Kitty, who phases just in time, and she exhales there in relief. I know I've been through moments like this before, but they don't get any easier. I can't help wondering what'll happen the one time my power doesn't work. Why'd I open my big mouth anyway? What am I doing here? I'm just a kid. And then she says to herself, no, not anymore. I'm an X-Man. I earned my place on the team, and here's why I prove it. And nice stuff too with Cockrum tilting the angles here, a Dutch angle here, another one here. Really gives a dynamism to the layouts and the panel design. Here we are looking at the dogfight outside and the attack ships zeroing in on the yacht here. All hunters close in, says one of the Brood. Cyclops here in the ruby quartz blister, firing away with his optic blasts and realizing they're hitting us from all sides more than we can handle, and our return fire's slackening off. Storm, are you okay? Because she stopped using her lightning. And the layout here is interesting. This kind of like fragmented, angular panel design gives a sense of the stress that everyone's under, how serious their situation is. So Storm is having a breakdown here. Her powers no longer yield to her will, she says. If I use them, I will kill, and that I cannot do. For you, for Kitty, for anyone. So we'll get more about that a little later in the issue. How's Kitty doing outside on the exterior of the yacht? So far so good, she says to Lilandra. But then, this is interesting, she's hit, but we don't really see it in the art. And this is something I've noted before in Cockrum's collaboration with Claremont, this second collaborative work between the pair. Sometimes Claremont will write something in the narrative captions or in the dialogue of characters that we don't see in the art. And I know that they worked Marvel style, that Claremont gave Cockrum the plot, and Cockrum laid out the story, then adding little elements that Cockrum said might surprise Claremont. So Claremont getting pages back that maybe didn't 100% conform with the plot he had in mind. Cockrum adding his own details and stuff to the storytelling. And it seems like that's something that's going on here. So we don't see that Kitty was injured. Lilandra asks her, what's the matter? Why did you scream? No problem really, she says. Shrapnel from a near miss. Didn't see it coming. Didn't phase. My suit automatically sealed itself, so I haven't lost much air. And we'll see how that pans out later. She's bleeding and it's hurting. Lilandra tells her to get inside immediately, but she refuses because she's almost finished. Meanwhile, over here, Carol is feeling those weird effects again, another spell of weirdness. She thinks to herself, worse than before, the sensations aren't unpleasant, just totally strange. The Brood subjected me to evolutionary modification. I guess they must have triggered something inside me, but what? So the fight is ongoing, and here we go. So the transformation occurs, and we get an explanation of what's going on here and what the Brood unleashed unwittingly in the narrative captions that Claremont writes. So the narrative captions say, years ago, a freak accident combined the best genetic elements of human and the ancient starfaring Kree to transform her into Ms. Marvel. And while she later lost her superpowers to the mutant Rogue, those hybrid genes remained now thanks to the Brood's meddling. Their untapped potential is being realized with a vengeance. She cries out in wonder more than fear, for the process seems surprisingly natural, rather like a butterfly emerging from its chrysalis. A blinding light flares within her soul, a thing apart from her that instantly becomes a part of her to form a union that will last till death. Real shades of the Phoenix Force bonding to Jean Grey there. The light is power, and Carol uses it without hesitation. So those fighter ships, they're destroyed. You can see it there. Fantastic panel here. And Kitty Pryde, meanwhile, finishes the job on the outside of the yacht. Everything's fixed. She shouts, throw the switch, Lilandra, throws into warp. It's kind of like, how about getting inside the ship before telling Lilandra to do that? And so Lilandra says, bless you, child, we're on our way. And then, are you there, Kitty? So great effect there as the ship kind of moves into warp drive. And then this is completely typical of Claremont. You go from an outer space adventure to the mundane and the quotidian of Professor X serving dinner in the rebuilt X Mansion. And here he is still working away a little bit on the last elements of what he's cooking up on the stove there. And then who arrives in except for now 13-year-old Illyana Rasputin, and she's also speaking English now. But look at the medallion that she's wearing around her neck. It's the one given to her by Belasco at the end of issue 160. So Illyana's in good form. She's saying to the professor how she's been exploring the house. It's almost exactly as I remember it. She's been away 7 years in her time, but only she was away for moments in the X-Men's time. Though it's a bit spooky with just the two of us here, she says. And the professor says, well, Moira will be back on Monday. That's Moira MacTaggert. That's wonderful, says Illyana. I like Dr. MacTaggert a lot. I'm sure she'll be pleased to hear that, says the professor. I like you too, Professor. Honest, she says. And then another page. So she sits down for the dinner and she's asking him questions about how it is sometimes she hears his voice perfectly clearly, but he's nowhere around. And so he says, he doesn't say anything actually. He's rather sparing with his answers in this scene, and it'll all come out why in his thought balloons at the end of the 2-page little scene. So he explains to her that in answer to her question that he taught her English while she slept. And then she's asking him about whether she's a mutant, like your brother Peter. The professor says, I'm a mutant, like your brother Peter, but where he transforms his body into organic steel, I read minds. Different people, different abilities. So she asks him, do you know what I'm thinking? He says a telepath should never indiscriminately mind scan people, especially those in his care. Your secrets are safe from me, child. And she asks, Professor, am I a mutant? Perhaps, he responds, I'm not sure. So why not use Cerebro to determine that? Well, we'll get a little answer shortly. She says, I can do neat things too, just like Peter, such as what? Oh, things. And just look at the look on her face, the shadow from her hair right over her eyes. She looks a little bit sinister in that panel, and it's deliberate. Also that grin on her face as well. And the professor, very thoughtful thinking there. Illyana's thoughts are protected by an extraordinarily powerful and sophisticated psionic shield. So it's not just that he's adhering to his ethical principle of not mind scanning people. He can't mind scan Illyana. And he continues his thoughts here. By the way, this is a great close-up, 3/4 profile close-up on the professor. And the body language too, of having his hand up around his chin, conveying that sense that he's in deep thought. In Cockrum's art, it's nicely done. But he thinks to himself, it could be natural, but I doubt it. According to Moira, she was abducted by a demon lord named Belasco and held for 7 years in his mystic domain. though only moments passed here on Earth. What she experienced there, for good or ill, no one knows. I ought to investigate, he thinks, find a way to pierce that barrier. And here's the surprise, but I no longer care enough to make the attempt. Let Moira deal with her. All I want is to be left alone. So the professor's lost heart after his experience in a coma and coming out of it, but there's still something wrong with him, done to him by the Brood, and we'll learn what that is in some issues' time. And here we are back in space. So we see Lilandra's yacht, and Binary now goes out to rescue Kitty from the hull of the ship, and Kitty here in wonder at the transformation wrought in Carol's physical being. Carol, thank heaven, is that you? And so it is. And then there's explanations inside, but everybody's in their spacesuits still, and you can see that their breath is cold in the space that they're in, and the lights are off. So there's a problem, and the problem is, Lilandra explains here, your repair saved us, she says to Kitty, but it was only a stopgap. The warp drive is now totally inert. With it, we've lost main and auxiliary power. That means no life support. Unless we regenerate the matter, antimatter cores will freeze or suffocate soon. So there's always a problem. Claremont always keeping the X-Men on their toes in terms of their survival in this Brood saga space adventure. So Storm is wondering whether her lightning might help or Cyclops' optic blasts, but Binary steps forward. Nowhere near enough, Aurora, she says, to do it right. What's needed is the functional equivalent of a star. And then in the narrative captions, she knows instinctively what must be done. Once more, she reaches within herself to the light in her soul that feels newborn, yet as old as time. So she's got so much power, and she's using it to power up these matter-antimatter cores here. Again, great visual imagination and design work by Cockrum for this alien Shi'ar technology. And let's continue. This is another great anchor image here, like a type of a version of Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, with Binary here and these magenta concentric circles laid out obviously with a compass, 3 of them there. Really gives a great, sorry, there's a 4th one up there as well, gives a great kind of communication, visual communication of the way that she's exuding her power into those battery cells. So the ship is powered up, you can see all the lights come on, but it takes something out of her. So she's discovered by powering up the ship the upper limit of her abilities. So she's not omnipotent in the way that the likes of Dark Phoenix was or seemed to be. And now this is really kind of funny here, where Lilandra orders everyone to go to bed. There's much left to do, and after a night's rest and a proper meal, we'll get to work. So a little human moment there, in the sense that like they've been really stressing themselves, tackling those Brood attack ships, and then with the period of time where they were in the frozen ship with the power off, like they need rest. So I like the way that Claremont acknowledges that within the story. And then after their rest, they're back to work again, still continuing the repairs on the outside of the ship there. But this time it's Colossus that's out there working with Binary, and he's asking her about how she feels about her new powers. And she says that she explains it all here, where she says to Colossus, my old friend Captain Marvel was gifted with cosmic awareness, an ability to become one with the universe. I think I've gone beyond that, she says. His was a physical merger. Mine is a physical, was a spiritual merger. By the way, why talking about Captain Marvel in the past tense? He's dead at this point. That original graphic novel by Jim Starlin has come out, The Death of Captain Marvel, so he's dead. But Carol continues and she says, his was a spiritual merger, mine is physical. Somehow when I use my power, I tap into a white hole. My energy source is the primal fabric of a universe. Like a star, she says, I can generate heat, light, radiation across the spectrum, gravity. And my perceptions, Colossus, you can't imagine what I see, how wondrous it is. So Colossus says, well, you sound very happy. And she says, she is. And so he says, will you join the X-Men? And that gives her pause. So she says here, and this is great character work from Claremont. So she says here, when I was a teenager, I hitchhiked to Cape Canaveral to watch an Apollo launch. My dad whaled the tar out of me, but it was worth it. I wanted so badly to be an astronaut, to explore space, discover new worlds, alien civilizations. As Ms. Marvel, I almost made it. Now suddenly my dreams come true, beyond my wildest expectations. But there's a price. Returning with you means rejecting my heart's desire, but fulfilling that desire means leaving everyone, everything I love. Earth was Carol Danvers' home, Colossus, but I fear it has no place for binary. And good expression on her face there as well. That sad, serious expression in Cockrum and Wiacek's art. It's nicely done. And interesting here how her desire to explore space, discover new worlds, alien civilizations, matches somewhat with Christopher Summers' current desires. That's Scott and Alex's father, who's also disinclined to return to Earth and wanting to stay in space and adventuring. So let's see. And then we have a little moment with Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler's kind of come into the position of X-Men medic. And so he's examining Kitty Pryde there, and she's fully recovered from the shrapnel strike that happened earlier. So he tells her to stay in bed, try to sleep, drink more hot lemon honey. She's got a bit of a cough. And he teleports to Cyclops and Lilandra, and he communicates that Kitty's fully recovered. Cyclops says, well, is that a problem? And here we go. Barely a day ago, she was dying. The shrapnel tore a nasty hole in her side, introducing radioactive elements into her bloodstream. From that and the warp transition, she absorbed enough hard radiation to kill a score of people. She shouldn't have survived the night, yet at this moment she's in perfect health. Nothing I did healed her, says Nightcrawler, but I'd very much like to learn what did. So Cyclops is listening, and just at this point Wolverine arrives, and he says, some questions are better left unanswered, Elf, because Wolverine knows the reason why she healed so quickly. That implanted queen egg in her. So Cyclops gets to the point of, you've been lurking about like a blasted spectre ever since we escaped from the Brood. Maybe it's time you explained yourself. Wolverine here, still annoyed about the fact that Cyclops didn't help him destroy the Queen, because he says that would have done some real damage, possibly crippled their entire race. But Cyclops makes the foundational principle of the X-Men's ethos that X-Men don't kill. And here, this is a great panel from Cockrum with Wolverine enraged, popping his claws. Want to bet, he says. It's really nicely done. But then he pulls them back in, and his shoulders slump, his head bowed forward, and he apologizes. I didn't mean to do that, he says. I guess all that's happened has driven me kind of buggy. You're right. What's there to get upset about? We escaped with our skins intact. Everything's hunky, flaming dory. And off he goes. So they both know there's something up. Nightcrawler says that they're friends. Maybe he'll talk to him. Cyclops says, stay with Lilandra, Kurt. Give her hand. There's a pattern forming. Kitty's one piece, Logan's another, and I mean to find out what it is. So the truth is going to come out soon. But first of all, we have this scene with Storm. So she's trying to figure out what's going on with her powers and why it is that she feels she's losing touch with her essential self. Some element, she thinks, is disrupting the critical harmony of mind, body and soul. I must find it, she thinks to herself, and put things right. So she's able to fly, but suddenly she's got a pain in her belly and she falls to the ground, and she's deeply upset here. She asks to be left alone, but Cyclops says to her, no dice, that's my riff. I like that. Something's tearing us apart, Aurora. If we deny its existence, if we turn away from those who want to help us, we're as good as dead, he says. So Storm, crying there, says, I fear I'm beyond your help. I'm consecrated to life. My mutant powers, and more importantly, my very soul, are bound to the primal force of a living world, our Earth. Removed from that environment, my abilities in and of themselves remain unimpaired. I'm as strong in purely physical terms as I ever was, but my soul is stricken. This is a very important part of Claremont's characterization of Storm. And she says, my spirit is wasting away, and the longer I'm separated from my home, the more I will lose. How will I ever regain those missing, ravaged pieces of myself, she asks. And when there's nothing left, what will become of me? Can a body live without its soul? Being aboard this vessel only makes matters worse. Look about you, nothing but steel, cold metal, unliving plastics, synthetics. I hate it. I need life to sustain me, she says. There's none here, not even the joy and love I felt for the X-Men. So Cyclops is baffled. I don't understand. We haven't changed. We still feel the same, but I am changing, she says. I have been ever since our escape, deep down in the core of my being, and I know neither the cause nor the final effect. So she's got another painful experience there, and she thinks it is if she says aloud, it is if I've become a stranger to myself, inhabiting a body no longer my own. So she wonders, she's like on the point of an epiphany. Could that be the answer? And then she realizes it's so obvious, so unthinkable. I never considered it. Scott, I sense life within me, a child. But how can this be? I must probe deeper. Where do you come from, my little one? She asks. Who? No. And then look at the rage and despair in her expression. With that cry comes a hurricane gust of wind that sweeps Cyclops the length of the bay and out the hatch. The hatch seals, slams shut, and she heads off on a scout ship. So what was all that about? And she's left her costume behind as well. And now it's time for Wolverine to give the explanation, to say what he knows. Cyclops tells him, I'm in no mood for games, pal. Your explanation's long overdue. So Wolverine was going to give it at the end of the previous issue before the attack by the brood ships. So now he gives it. And interesting the way that Cockrum shows this. He's not showing us Wolverine talking, but rather the responses and the facial expressions of the different characters. I thought of killing you, Wolverine tells them. Couldn't do that either. I figured there was hope. There's always hope. We'd somehow get lucky, run into a miracle. Who knows, I could be right, but I wouldn't count on it. When the Sleazoids captured us, we were taken before their queen. They call her the Great Mother, and she implanted an egg in each of us. Each egg contains an embryonic queen. It bonded itself to our nervous systems, so it can't be surgically removed. When it hatches, a physical metamorphosis occurs. The host body is reshaped into the birth form of the young Sleazoid. In the process, it absorbs the genetic potential and abilities of the host to pass on to its progeny. So Colossus looks enraged. Binary too, even though she was never implanted with an egg. But we'll see her response now on the last page. Wolverine continues. He says, in my case, they reckon without my mutant power, the healing factor. My body treated the egg as an invading disease organism and went after it. Whole flaming hog. The fight nearly killed me. That was partly why I couldn't tell you the truth. I felt guilty, a little ashamed. I like that characterization detail in Claremont's dialogue there. Because I was free, I would live, and you wouldn't, he says. The embryo queens possess a degree of awareness. They know when they're threatened, and they'll take any steps to ensure their survival. In Kitty's case, that meant curing her. A dead host is of no use to him, but that they can just as easily be nasty. So, binary, enraged, nasty Logan, they don't know the meaning of the word, but by all I hold holy, they're going to learn. And she blasts out the hull of the ship, and there's instant decompression, explosive decompression, the X-Men and Lilandra being sucked out into space. So really rash action there by Carol, but so filled with emotion and rage, she forgets about the team. What a cliffhanger to end on. How on earth are they going to get out of this one? Next issue, transfigurations. So that's kind of promising that we're going to get those metamorphoses of the X-Men in the next issue. So excellent stuff. I think Claremont or Cockrum goes out really, really strongly with the art in this particular issue. It's some of his strongest in his second run. Definitely not, you know, like clocking out and doing an okay only job. Really putting everything into this last issue, and his pencils really working very well with Wiacek's inks. So letters page here, letters have to do with issue 157. Two very science-based letters there to start with. Really interesting stuff coming in from readers back in 1982, like really deeply involved in all the elements of the stories that Claremont was coming up with at the level of physics too. So interesting, intelligent readers' letters at the time. There you go. I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on Dave Cockrum's last issue of his second run on the Uncanny X-Men. Let me know your thoughts on this issue in the comment section to the video. If you enjoyed my review, please like the video on YouTube. It really does help the channel. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.